Something that's been discussed quite a bit, not only in council but in the mayoral debate, is the city's role in economic development. So, one issue that sort of lingered for a long time in the Highland Square neighborhood was the property where Mustard Seed Market is located. The city had owned that property for quite a while, had acquired it in hopes of attracting some new grocery store, some type of retail into that area, and it was unfilled for quite a while. In the mayoral debate earlier this month, Mr. Siplin advocated that this is a bad way to do economic development, that it puts taxpayers on the line if that tenant decides to leave the building. But Mr. Horgan said, hey, the city really needs to do all it can, and we should really look at Highland Square and what's been done there as a model for how to do economic development in the city. That being said, what do you think the city's role in economic development and business development should be? And we'll start this with Ms. Blake.
Okay, as far as with the Highland Square project, yes, and that I know exactly where that project is, and it was a new building that was there already, and then it was knocked down. And so, I mean, we were just wondering, or I know I used to always wonder from driving by there, but it's a commercial lease that the city is doing to Mustard Seed, and it's, I guess, a new, innovative, creative way to bring businesses into the city. But our role is to create an environment for a business to come. If they felt, I guess, that the citizens over there felt that they should have, or they needed it, I don't know if they did try to talk to other business food chain owners that were already in existence. Acme was right down the street, or Dave's. I don't know if other people had opportunities. I don't know all of the ramifications of it, but I just think sometimes if the citizens want something, we have to do whatever it takes to meet the citizens' needs. But our job should really be to just create the environment, but not be in these leases that could put us on the hook, or if it's not a successful business or something, and then cause further debt. That part I do agree with.
Mr. Thanasiu.
I think it sounds like we philosophically agree that government should not necessarily be in the business of supporting individual businesses. Mm-hmm. That said, government has a role in creating an environment for businesses to thrive. And so I know that the Mustard Seed is in Highland Square is right now, it's an asset to the community. Mm-hmm. And hopefully it will continue to be an asset. I would like to see, for example, in my community, my neighborhood community in Ward 7 in Firestone Park, there's a business district on Astor Avenue. And that is one of the key points of my platform that I would like to see that area revitalized. And if we on City Council, if I'm elected, can help create an environment not only in other parts of the city, but specifically I would hope to represent my ward, create an environment that welcomes and supports the businesses that exist there, but also attracts businesses that would add to the neighborhood feel. They would allow people who live in Ward 7 to enjoy an area in their neighborhood rather than have to drive across town to do so.
All right. Well, that being said, if you guys would like to either ask each other a question or propose a general question, you can.
I was just going to piggyback a little bit off of what he had said about the support that if we're going to be in that type of business of doing this commercial leasing, be fair to the businesses that are already there, because I live in a neighborhood where a store had to close. If they had that sweet deal, they probably would not have had to close. So we need to be cognizant and be fair about all the different business districts. I think it's 14 of them for the city of Akron. We need to be fair to support the ones that are in existence right now as well.
As I mentioned, I'm an alumnus of the University of Chicago, and one of their most famous people was Milton Friedman, the economist, who won the Nobel Prize, among other things. But I think that his ideas, which basically are to minimize government involvement in economic development, are probably the best. For example, in the South American country of Chile, after their civil war, they actually went to people, in Milton Friedman's school of thought and said, well, what should we do in order to revive our economy? And, they adopted his ideas, which basically are low taxes and minimal regulations, and they now have about the best economy in Latin America. And I think the same principles could be applied on a city level. For example, Akron's income tax is 2.25%, and rather than looking for some other project to spend the money on, I think Akron should reduce its tax to 2% to match all of the other cities in the region, because people like me who live in Akron but work elsewhere have to send in that check for the extra 0.25% every year, and well, I kind of resent that, and I imagine a lot of other people feel the same way. So, and then there are regulations. Akron has a ridiculous number of regulations for a city its size. A particularly glaring example was the food trucks. I mean, there were people who wanted to set up food trucks to service, the Akron youth students and some of the people who work downtown. And Akron set up these ridiculous requirements of, like a $25,000 license fee, and they were restricted to only a few places they could park and so on. And so those guys aren't rich. They probably were operating on a margin of 5 or 6%, and banning them in effect through regulation is a foolish thing to do. And the same principle would apply across the board for other regulations. The food trucks is just a particularly glaring example.
Yeah, I would say each business company, it's going to be a different relationship. So I would say, what role should the city play? They should stay out of it as much as they can until I think where that is being put. That was hard to put some businesses in there, and I live right down the block from there, and I think they had, and I only have outside information. I don't have the inside information, but I believe there were times where we heard so and so was going to go in there, then something else is going in there, and then at that point when it was just vacant and it was built and brand new, there's something that they had to do, I imagine, in the city. So they worked together to make a deal. So the role should be, once again, it should be less government, more private sector, and the city should be there to help where it's needed. That's my answer.
Mr. Darlington?
I agree with at least part of what Mr. Martin said, that city does need to be there to assist. I guess I'll go back to what we were just talking about a moment ago with the Gojo situation. We don't know that the city ever reached out to Gojo to assist them to try to move those multiple, and I believe it was, if not in the multiple dozens, it may have even been over 100 brand new manufacturing jobs. Does not appear that we did anything as a city or a county to bring that work right here to where the headquarters of Gojo is. The situation you had there, as best I know it, and have followed it over the last dozen years or so, with that particular market is the fact that there was a belief within City Hall that that was an under-serviced or served area. However, you had already had one grocery store go out of business. There's another major grocery store, also headquartered in Akron, not far down the street. We opened that up, as best I remember, we ended up with somewhere between 12, 16, maybe even more companies that the city sought proposals from to move into that property that was city owned, and all of those businesses declined to move in, and it wasn't until we issued, I believe they ended up using HUD grants to build a grocery store, which a company is leasing from the city of Akron for basically cost, and I hope they're successful. I hope all businesses are successful, but we've got to make sure that we don't overextend ourselves, and we have done an awful lot of that over the past 28 years in Akron.
Mm-hmm. And to frame the follow-up question a little bit, to specify, I think the controversial issue that's come up in the mayoral debates is, should the city in this case be acting as a landlord? Obviously there's a lot of specifics related to the mustard seed market. Is it appropriate for the city in a case like that to act essentially as a landlord, or is that too much involvement on the part of the government, too much risk that the taxpayers are essentially taking on and owning that property leasing that space.
Yeah. My stand on that is no. We shouldn't be landlords. You know, we should be able to help assist people to come in there to have we have quality places and jobs and businesses in our city. But yeah, to be landlords, no. But you know, we have a lot of vacant space, and we have to do something with it.
Very much in tune with that answer. We've got a situation in the past where our city has overextended ourselves. I think of the Inventors Hall of Fame. When they packed up and left, the taxpayers of Akron were on the hook for several years at $1 million a year of paying for that vacant space that eventually was turned into a school because of the fact that the bonds and the other financing that had been floated for that when the Inventors Hall of Fame was no longer here, that was gone. You get into that same situation enough times in a row and you put yourself in the financial crisis that Akron is in.